is what other companies invest in that ETF or in that individual stock. Like I always look for where's BlackRock, where's State Street. If they're in there, I know is good. It's
Keeping up
good.
with current events so you can see how the stuff that's going on in the world is affecting that particular industry or
Mhm.
that particular stock. What are the kids doing? Kids drive the market. What are they, the TikTok thing and all that other stuff, right? Sometimes you have to talk to them like, man, you use this stuff? Man, that thing's whack. Nobody using that. Okay, cool. I ain't on that, right?
Right.
But you have to be a visionary. So that's what I would say. If you're going to
Mhm.
buy individual securities, one, use it, right?
Mhm.
Make sure you're a user. You're just not buying it because somebody told you to buy it. And two, you have to be able to see where it's going.
Mhm.
And then the third thing, of course, is keeping up with current events so you can see how the stuff that's going on in the world is affecting that particular industry or
Mhm.
that particular stock.
Mhm. And I think that's an excellent point that you made because even during the pandemic, like I had been using Zoom for a number of years. And then during the pandemic, it's like everybody learned about Zoom. That stock shot up. I was just like,
Oh, it went crazy.
whoa. I bought Zoom the first day it went public. I was like,
Yeah,
that thing shot up so much during the pandemic. I was like, I gotta sell. I gotta sell some of this, right? I
yeah,
gotta get
yeah.
some of this money off the table.
Hey, but you know what? Can you talk about that real quick? See, because we talked about investing and
Hmm.
holding,
Hmm.
but is it okay sometimes to pinch a little off?
It's definitely okay to pin something up. Like you're in this to make money,
That's
and
it. Yeah,
you do want to leave some,
yeah,
in there for the long term, and
right.
be that person that leaves an inheritance for like your children's children, right?
Yeah.
But shoot, you need to live too. You
I
gotta
mean, I
live
see that's
too.
the reward.
Right,
Hey,
that's the
you made a
reward.
good pick. It's mature. It's grown.
Hmm.
We're not going to get too deep into it, but you get the splits and you double
Hmm.
up the number of
Hmm.
shares. You don't want them to split too much. Because I was like, hold on here, wait a minute.
No.
But you get I've had a couple of splits, right? Well, it's like,
Hmm.
okay, I'm gonna sell one half of that split.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna go ahead and cash out. But it's okay to reward yourself
Hmm.
for making a good investment. And sometimes, I hate to say it, the companies will then give you what? Dividends.
Dividends.
Hey, I'm just saying. I mean,
Right.
it's a good thing. It doesn't hurt now.
Right. And it's a good thing you mentioned those splits too, because Apple loves to split, it seems like. When the price gets a little bit too high.
Explain the split.
Yeah.
Explain the split, what it
Okay.
is and how it works.
Okay. So basically, stock split, and I do have a video on that in my
Okay.
YouTube and that what is it, money markets and mindset section of my YouTube channel. There's a stock split is explained in there. But basically, like say Apple, they reach maybe two, 300. I'm gonna say $300, just as an example. They reach $300. What they like to do is basically they like their price to stay. I don't. To me, I look at it as approachable. For the everyday person to be able to buy it. So they'll do sometimes a 3-to-1 or 4-to-1 or 5-to-1 split. So basically, they'll take your one share of stock and split it into 3, 4, or 5 shares of stock. Does that make you rich off of that? No, because it still equals to the same amount. If you had $300 in there, it's still going to total $300, but now it's split over different shares. But what that does is lower the overall price of it. So it makes Apple more accessible to me, to more people. And actually, I'm more willing to go in there and buy some more shares of it at that lower price.
Right.
Instead of it.
And it also allows Apple to make more money.
Hmm.
Because when they split, yes, we get more shares, but it
Hmm.
opens it up more shares available to the
Hmm.
public because it's a publicly traded fund,
Right.
right? And then the dividend is them essentially sharing a portion of their profits
Right.
for that year,
Right.
right? So if you ever get a stock and it's like, okay, we were paying a dividend, but we ain't paying them more. That's an indicator probably that things didn't go too well from a
Yeah.
profit side. Does that mean you sell it? No. Just maybe had an off year or off quarter or something like that. But if it's a split, it's a good thing depending on the stock. And depending on what's going on, I'll use the Trump stock. What's that technology stock? The one that media stock, the Trump media stock.
I don't know.
Okay, so Trump, it's called Trump Media. And in order for him to raise money for his campaign, they took the Trump media stock public. Well, I think it's split, and don't quote me on this. They've had like 3 or 4 splits since it opened. What does that tell me? It ain't doing that
Right,
well, right? So they're trying to allocate more shares, open more shares so people can buy it at dirt bargain rates, right? So again, especially if they have an IPO, their initial public offering, and then they immediately do a split within a year, hold on, something may not be right. But
that's
you
why I
gotta be a
like it.
visionary and see it.
And that's why I like investing in established companies. So once again, looking at that ETF, looking at the sector of those related ETFs, and I'm gonna say technology sector, look in there for different ETFs that represent the technology sector, see what companies are at the top. And that's free information. You can go onto your E-Trade account and go in there and look at the companies that are inside of an ETF. But then also one other thing too you want to look at is what other companies invest in that ETF or in that individual stock. Like I always look for where's BlackRock, where's State Street. If they're in there, I know is good. It's good.
And I'll say that this is one of my secrets, right? I'm a bottom feeder, meaning I like to buy low. But and let me say this full disclosure: everybody has their own methodology in terms of how they buy stocks and what works for them. I have no problem sharing it because I want everybody to do well, right? So I gave you the tip about buying U.S. debt, right? That's not a hidden secret, but a lot of people don't buy it because they don't see any value in it. Well, I see the value because it's a hedge against inflation, right? I always want to win in some area, right? I don't always just want to be losing all the way. But with respect to buying stocks, I buy the big boys sometimes, but I also buy the little boys who support the big boys. Example, you buy Ford. That's the automaker. Well, in order to make a car, they have fiberglass windows, they have tires. There's the other little components that make up the car, the plastics. Well, there's a lot of unknown companies that are billion-dollar companies operating here in the US and abroad, and they supply all of the materials that go into making that car. And you could make a killing, which I have a lot of times, buying those small companies that support the big ones. These are what we would call mid caps, small to mid cap companies. You get great value. They may be under $15, $10 a share, but they're not going out of business. Why? Because they're indispensable. Ford, Chrysler, GM, they need those companies because they're really the engine that make those cars go. So look for those little companies that supply specific industries. The microchips, right? Integrated circuit chips. Yes. And what is it? Apple and Microsoft is great. But guess what? They're those microprocessing chips that they use in their hardware and in their processing.
And then the car companies also use those chips. So once again, that's taking us back to the technology sector. I love to invest in those semiconductor companies because they're the picks and shovels for all the bigger, pretty much everything we do in the whole world now requires a microchip of some sort. So
a really good company, because I know a lot of women and guys will watch this and they want to buy Gucci and all that stock. That's fine, but what about YKK? They just make zippers. All of this, if you look at your zippers, it's probably a YKK zipper. You see what I'm saying?
It says it right on there too, YKK.
It says YKK. Who pays attention to a zipper, right? But they make the zippers. I think they may almost have a monopoly on the zipper game, right? I may be, just speaking out loud, but no one is thinking that. Yeah, I wear pants and they have zippers. Well, how you gonna wear pants without a zipper? Well, who makes the zippers? YKK. Let me look these guys up and see what the hell's going on. So again, there are a lot of hidden gems, a lot of food companies, right, that supply the food to various fast food corporations, right? US Foods, those type of things. So you don't always have to go with what I would call the Nike and the Adidas, and the big brand names. That stuff is fine, but find those companies that feed those big companies. And they don't just supply Nike, they supply a whole industry, right? Textiles and things of that nature. And you'd be amazed that, and it's a good steady growth stock, right? Good steady growth value stock.
And even with that too, that reminds me of another ETF, the Russell 2000 ETF. That's your mid caps, your mid.
And they got a Russell 5000 too, right? There's
Yeah,
5,000 and a 2,000,
5,000. I
right?
got a 3,000.
Yeah. I mean, you can catch them all, right?
Yeah.
But the only thing I would say about the big giant index funds, right? And this is for folks, if you have most retirement accounts are tied to the S&P 500, right? So for me, when I invest in something, I don't want to double up. Whatever I have in retirement tied to the S&P, I try to invest in things that aren't tied to the S&P, if that makes sense. Because let's say if the S&P goes down, well, I'm losing it in retirement. I'm also losing it on the back end in my private holdings, right? If I'm winning on both, I'm winning on both ends. So I have my retirement vehicle. The S&P is the main driving force. The S&P 500, Standard & Poor's 500. That's what's driving. Then I'll say, you know what? I'm going to invest in other things, maybe some ETFs that aren't associated with the S&P, because I want to make sure that I'm not taking double the losses. I love the double gains, but I don't want to take double the losses. That's my philosophy on it, in addition to the hedge with the treasury bonds, right? And you want to know what's in the S&P 500? Just Google it. They'll list all 500 companies. It's the top 500 chip companies. So what I'll do is look at that, like to your point, what are the top 500 companies? Who's supplying those companies? Feeding them, right? So I'm not just investing in S&P. I'm investing in those other companies that support those companies and supply those companies. And in that way, I have a little bit more balance.
Well, I stay tied closely to the S&P 500. Yeah. Because but then, like I said, I like to buy my individual stocks. I have companies that I have researched and looked over those companies, so but most of them, once again, are tied to the S&P 500. But that's just what I like, though. I like the companies, I like the bigger ones. I don't really do the older companies, even though a lot of them, like the dividend aristocrats, all those kind of
companies
that have been around for a long time.
Yeah.
Because I'm noticing with some of them, and watching them, like it seems that they pay good dividends, but then if you look at it, they're depreciating in value. And I'm like, no, I want my companies to be going up in value. Pay me a dividend, but all of mine don't. Like Amazon doesn't pay a dividend, doesn't pay me a dividend, but Amazon keeps going up. Warren Buffett, what's that? Berkshire A and B, they don't pay a dividend. They don't pay a dividend, but that stock, you watch it, that thing keep going up. So some of them, you're just gonna have to figure out what kind of investor you are. That's it. Figure out who you are.
Right. And one other point, and I'm gonna leave it here. I keep saying one other point because every time you say something else pops
I know that's what when you say something, I keep getting another thought.
So for me, I try to stay away from companies that are overseas. Right. Some of them, of course, they have a proven track record. That's different. But like China, Brazil, because as I just mentioned earlier, the market is affected by global events. And if areas of the world are unstable and that company is headquartered there or operating there or producing goods there, you really are rolling the dice. I tend to invest only in U.S. companies. Now, if the U.S. company has ties to a foreign entity, that's a little bit different. But I'm talking about your whole operation is overseas. I generally won't invest in. Now, that BYDDF thing for the batteries, that was one of the main reasons why I didn't invest, because they were based in China. Even though I saw Warren Buffett jump on it, who really isn't a tech guy per se, right? But I said, you know what? But I'm just not thinking that this electrical vehicle stuff is going to happen. Plus, they're in China. No, not doing it. Well, they got a monopoly on electric batteries, and we're importing them here into the U.S. And there we are. I think Elon Musk is doing his thing with them and stuff. But Yeah. So that's again just the philosophy that you have to be comfortable with
Mhm.
what it is you do. But if you're gonna invest in companies that are overseas, there's extreme market volatility with it because global events can really shake things up, especially if it's an unstable country.
Mhm. Yeah, that reminds me of TSM. They make the semiconductor chips as well, and they have one of the better ones, high
Right.
quality products, but they based in Taiwan. And
And what
Taiwan,
happened in Taiwan over the past 2 or 3 years, right?
right. And then China has been a lot of hostility with them and China. So basically uncertain situations around them. And so
Yeah.
that stock is very volatile. Just
Yeah, I had ASX, and when I bought them, it was okay, right? But then our politicians wanted to start producing more semiconductors here in the US. So that drove the price down because the thought was we don't want to import a lot of that kind of technology into the US. So
Mhm.
it affected it, right? So that's one where we got hit by our own people, right? Congress, hey, you know what? China's importing too much, boom, 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 and it drove the price down. And then, of course, China's trying to absorb Taiwan back up under its fold.
Mhm.
What does that mean for those companies in that sector? Because Taiwan is, I think, is the number one producer of the semiconductors, if I'm correct, right? I think
I don't
Taiwan
know that
is
they still number one because once
okay.
again, all of this situation going on with China,
Right, right.
because Nvidia has taken off in the last
Yeah,
year.
of course.
So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Who saw that one come, right?
right.
But and I saw it there, but I wasn't thinking anything about it.
Mhm.
But in sum, without going too far off on a tangent, just keep in mind if you're buying those foreign stocks, you can do well, but you better pay attention to what's going on in
Right.
those countries because you could
Exactly.
really get hammered.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that was talking about the purpose of savings. We poured out right here. We gave we gave
We let it out.
a lot of good information in this
Yeah.
chat. This video right here. So hopefully everybody got something they can take with them. Get rid of that fear because it's not benefiting you. Don't pour everything into, your stock. Because once again, like we talked about, we like that liquidity.
Right.
And then you may need some money for, just an emergency that comes up. So, but think and seriously consider, getting in the game, getting in the game.